I'll tell you, want to hear something funny? When I went to Georgetown, so I was in debt up to my ears. I had no money. My father was a truck driver. And so it was all loans. And the loans were secured by my parents' house through a credit union, through a truck driver's credit union, a beer company. So when I got out, I was 43, I remember the number vividly, $43,000 in debt. And that was quite some time ago. So it might be the equivalent of $150,000 now. So I couldn't get a job. Affirmative action was roaring. Plus the economy was tanking. This would be the Carter years, inflation, et cetera, and gas lines. So I had to get a job. So I became a cop. I transported federal prisoners. And no offense to anyone, but I didn't really particularly like cops. It's not like I wanted to be a cop, but they paid at the time $14,000 a year. And they would pay for your education because they had programs now where they wanted to educate, guys to have maybe a different point of view on criminals and stuff. So I went and was studying for my master's degree at Georgetown and transporting federal prisoners in Washington, D.C. And these were not nice people. I mean, there was a guy I wrote an article about. His name was Jesse Martin. He killed 83 people, some incredible number of people. He was a hitman. And his claim to fame was that he boxed Cleveland Williams, who once fought Sonny Liston, so tough guy. And so I transported him. I transported the Tullers. This would be a father and two sons who became radicals. He was an employee, he sent his kids to the Green Berets. They went AWOL, and they formed a radical terrorist group, hijacked a plane to Cuba, did bank robberies to fund their assassinations. I got caught. One got wounded. He wound up hijacking a plane to Cuba. Since they had killed a cop in Washington, this was the first place they came back. So I transported one of the Tullers, and I had no idea. So these FBI guys have rifles looking for snipers. I have a 38 caliber Smith & Wesson. I'm going, they're not such bad guys. But you meet people like that and you see horrors, true horrors.
Yeah.
That no one else would see. Describing people, it's like somebody coming back from combat. You really tell somebody, but they say, oh, well, yeah, maybe, or maybe not, or, maybe it's exaggerating. But one way or the other, it was the best thing that ever happened for my writing. I was really annoyed about it. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. But in the end, I started writing for True Detective magazine. So I would meet these characters and I say, yeah, this is a good story. The father, two sons, hijacked planes. So I wrote a novel about it called Death Mission Havana for the Nick Carter series. And I wrote an article for the Washingtonian magazine. And then I met the Hanafi Muslim killers. This was a terrible situation. But Muhammad Ali was involved, Elijah Muhammad, the biggest mass murder in Washington's history in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's house. So, it was a great story. So I met these guys, awful people, and wrote about it because I knew the detectives involved. But that turn in my life, which, when it happened, I said, this is awful. This is the worst thing that could happen. It's like, frankly, it's like somebody taking you and plunging you into a sewer or something. And there you are, and you're living, with no way out. But I guess the whole idea, lemons and lemonade. I said, this is a gold mine. And it really changed my writing and gave me an insight into another world I would never, ever have seen had I not been transporting these guys. And some of them really were con men and incredibly clever. Some of them were incredibly ruthless. Some of them were the devil incarnate. And you really start to understand human nature in a way that you never would selling insurance or sitting in a garret somewhere and writing a novel. You have to live life.
Yeah, well, you're seeing, I don't know if they're broken humans or they're just humans who are unfiltered. Like maybe we all have a little bit of them in us, that sort of thing. That's a whole big philosophical discussion. But how much conversational contact were you able to have with some of these guys?
Oh, I got to know them very well. As a matter of fact, it's sort of funny with this guy, Jesse Martin. I was going to write an article, Jesse James Martin, a modern day outlaw, right? So I sit down with the guy. He's an awful killer. Cold-blooded murderer. So I got to know him quite well. So I go in the cell with him when it's just me. And, really everything is understaffed in these prisons. So I go in and it's sort of me and him. And so I said, Jesse, how much did you get like for these hits, for these assassinations you did? He said, sometimes I got $1,500, sometimes I got $500, sometimes I got $200. I said, Jesse, so you would kill me for $200? He said, I'd kill you for $50.
Because you're a cop.
I go, guard. Please let me out of here.
For a pack of cigarettes. So at what point though are you so you're writing for these magazines simultaneously while doing this? At what point are you doing a transition, and how does that transition look?
I got I'll be just perfectly honest. The guy I knew very vaguely because I sort of was involved in moving him, committed suicide. He hung himself. He got raped by a bunch of guys, and when he got into prison, he was a gentle person. And when he got into the prison, they just destroyed him, and he hung himself. And that was it for me. So I had a buddy who was older than me, who was on the Nautilus, by the way, when it went under the North Pole. So he was a little bit older than me. And I said, I got $5,000 in the bank, no debt. Let's get the hell out of here. So we drove from Arlington, Virginia in a Valiant to Acapulco. Got robbed along the way by banditos in the hills, met every wayward woman that was in sight, and just really had a cathartic 3-4 weeks or so. Had no money coming back. We had to like beg for gas at gas stations to get back to Virginia. But anyway, that sort of did it. And I said, this was an experience I had, but I would say it rots your soul, and it really was contaminating at some point. And I said, I don't care what the consequences, I'm not doing this anymore. Because you really get a view of human nature that is poisonous to you. And so that's when I went back to New Jersey, where I was from. So I was in Washington at the time. And I met a very nice man who made me a salesman for the company I wound up running. He looked at me and said, you look like a guy that could use a break. I said, you got that right. And so he hired me as a salesman, and I worked my way up to becoming CEO.
That whole
and writing all along the way.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine to get to where you're at now, you'd have to be writing all the time. But that statement you made just a little bit ago about how it rots your soul, a job like that. I've heard the same thing about being a border guard, working for the naturalization section of the government, interacting with people who are trying to escape hostile regimes. Yeah. Or even just trying to stop drugs from coming in over the border. I mean, because it all overlaps. Like, it's a similar type of vibe where in a couple of years, a lot of people just walk away.
Yeah, I think so. And if you don't, and this is why it's difficult, with these cops, particularly in places like Washington, D.C., where there's murders all the time. This is a violent country. It's a violent country. Oh, yeah. And a cop literally can just walk into almost anything, and somebody could just pull a gun and shoot him. And that's the life you're living. And so even when I was transporting prisoners, a lot of them I was a single guy, so I was going to nightclubs and things. And I'd run into guys I transported who I knew were out for murder charges. They'd look at me across the bar, and I carried a gun everywhere I went. Just no way to live.